Hey y'all, sorry for taking so long to post the part 2 of the Castlevania update. I caught a cold, had to deal with real life stuff, worry about the current state of the world. But I'm all over that now. So if you've been living under a rock for the last few days, I made a video covering the killer buffs to Dredge, Doctor, and Nemesis, in addition to the many perk changes with the Castlevania update. They can all be found in the initial video, and part 2, as you are watching now, is going to focus instead on the new killer, the new perks, and the changes that were hard to define without playtesting. So to start things off, let's talk about the big bad wolf, or bat, or vampire, whatever he is in the room, Dracula. I will also be continuously calling him Dracula, because the Dark Lord is so unbelievably camp that even Skull Merchant would find it too extra. It is here I would talk about the killer's gameplay and what they do, but considering they've been out for more than 2 weeks, I know what they do, and you probably already know too, so I will only cover my thoughts on them. If you do not know what they do, here is a list of videos from other content creators who explain it and play it, because we should support other content creators out there. Now onto Dracula. I'm going to say something that I'm sure many of you were not expecting. I am mixed on him. On one side, I like the fact that behavior is stuck so close to his portrayal in his games. The fire coming from the ground, the ability to shapeshift into different animals, even his Mori and chase music are references to the games he comes from. This is something that behavior have always excelled at, and it is portraying licenses incredibly close to their original source material. It is this portrayal that makes it so hard to complain about how boring he feels. Now obviously when a new killer comes out, players are quick to compare and contrast them with the rest of the roster. Trickster has been referred to as Huntress Point 5, Xenomorph as Nemesis Light, and Vecna as 4 killers stitched into one. But when you compare them to the rest of the roster, they all have something that separates them and make them unique. Trickster has a laceration meter in main event, Xenomorph has their tunnels and flame turrets, and Vecna is sponsored by Shadow Wizard Money Gang. He loves casting spells. Unlike those other killers, Dracula doesn't have anything separating him from the rest of the roster, making him truly feel like a recycled nightmare. Interestingly, he feels very similar to Vecna, where they have many tools to start a chase, and once they do, they're never letting go. As for balance, the add-ons are probably the funniest I've ever seen for any killer. The vampire and bat form are pretty good, but the wolf form is the most clunky. The wolf is designed for tracking and gap closing, and yet it feels like it struggles to do either, with a lack of control on the pounce and the send orbs in haste vanishing incredibly fast. Then of course the backwards movements and the 110 speed on the wolf form doesn't help, only making it feel much worse. I suspect behavior will buff the wolf form with the launch of the patch. Let's now move away from Dracula slightly, and talk about what puts content on my table. Perks. The perks for both Dracula and Trevor Belmont are honestly some of the best to come out for any chapter. We have been eating good for the most part when it comes to perks, as we have seen some really good perks, and any really bad perks have been minimal in nature. Since I was covering Dracula just now, I will cover his perks first and save Trevor last, as I have more thoughts on his perks compared to Dracula. Firstly, we have Dominance, which blocks a totem or chest for 8 seconds when the survivor interacts with that specific object for the first time. The killer also sees the blocked object's aura in white. This is a perk that is designed to be a support tool for totem defense, and is pretty good at what it does. The aura reveal for the totem or chest provides a small amount of intel gathering for the player, the blocking effect helps to keep any hex totem perk alive longer, and with Thrill of the Hunt you can make totems nearly immortal. Overall, Dominance is very good, and what keeps it balanced is the fact that it's a one-time use for each totem or chest, and not a refreshing effect, as it would have been a nightmare with Hex Face the Darkness. Also, I don't know why it also affects chests, but I'm not complaining, as it combos quite nicely with a particular perk behavior added with Dracula. Next we have Hex Wretched Fate, and I will admit, my feelings of the perk have changed when I first saw it. When a generator is completed, Wretched Fate will ignite a random dull totem, cursing the obsession with a minus 33% penalty to gem repair speeds. The effect can only be removed by destroying the totem, which the obsession can't see 12 meters away. I first thought the perk was kind of dull, but then I read it again. Wretched Fate is probably the best perk in the game for shutting a player down from gen repair, as their speed is so heavily impacted that they have to find the totem to feel useful. This becomes complicated, as Wretched Fate has the ability to combine with Shaman builds to keep it alive for an extended period, or you can be like Scott and run Hex Pentimento, because of course he discovered these perks are evil when combined together. In fact, I discovered a rather abusive build with Dominance, Wretched Fate, Thrill of the Hunt, and Devour Hope on Doctor. Just run double calm add-ons and watch as the whole game goes up in flames of the survivor's rage. So does this mean the perk needs to be changed? Oddly, no. It's a little tricky. Hex perks are one of the oddest designs to balance in Dead by Daylight. They are perks that need to be strong, as they have the chance to blow up in the killer's face at the start of the trial before they even fetch value. Wretched Fate luckily only slows down gen repair speeds, meaning the Obsession can still help through healing, body blocking, and distracting the killer. I think the perk will have the chance to be exceptionally annoying in the future, if another perk comes into play to enhance it, but for now I would place the perk on the watch list and see what happens. Lastly, we have Human Greed, and I have to admit something. This perk did the impossible. It made Hoarder usable. Human Greed grants the ability to see survivors' auras for 3 seconds when they run 8 meters near a closed chest. You also gain the ability to close open chests, with the catch being that survivors open these chests 50% faster, and the perk closing effect goes on a 60-second cooldown. I gotta be honest here, I really like Human Greed. It's a very unique aura read in the game, as chests have been some of the most underutilized objects for perks in the entire game. The overall idea of it works nicely, as chests tend to spawn in hotspot locales, such as main building and killer shack, and since you can close open chests, you can reset these, as I call them, mini Skull Merchant drones. Now onto why Human Greed makes Hoarder tolerable. I talked about Hoarder back in my video looking over Twins' perks, and to this day the perk has not received any changes. These two perks have a dual synergy with each other, not only because Hoarder notifies you if a survivor is attempting to shut down the aura read, but because you gain 2 additional chests, meaning more aura reading locations. It took behavior around 4 years, but they finally gave Hoarder some form of synergy, after they removed the perk synergy with certain killers a year ago. Overall, Human Greed is good. I like the effect, and if I could change anything, I would reduce the kick cooldown to 30 seconds, as 60 is a little extreme for just closing a wooden box. Also, I did see Otstarva's video on chests, and while I do agree that they need buffs, I think a few of the points he mentioned in the video were, as the hip kids say, a little funky. Now onto Trevor, and just like Dracula, I really like what behavior have done with his perks. Let's talk about the perk that everyone has been talking about, Exaltation. This perk activates after pallet stunning the killer, instantly recharging 25% total charges to the item in your hand, and your item upgrades by 1 tier of rarity. The perk goes on cooldown for 30 seconds, and your item returns to its initial state once you escape the trial. I really like Exaltation. I'm honestly surprised it has the chance to be good. Exaltation is designed to be a thematic perk. This is an archetype of perks that behavior designs with the intention of not being good or bad, but instead to provide dramatic flair for the character it is representing. We have seen thematic perks in Dead by Daylight before, from Soul Survivor on Laurie Strode, to Repressed Alliance on Cheryl Mason, and Exaltation is very similar to them all. The perk for the most part does provide a good amount of value, but a good example of Exaltation seriously messing up your game plan is when you run a Commodious toolbox, and when you finally get a pallet stun, you lose it for an Alex's toolbox. I'm sure Exaltation helped you out there. Okay, this is more of an extreme example, but for the most part Exaltation can be beneficial, as most of the items in the game do improve slightly with rarity. I can definitely see Exaltation being run with flashlights and medkits, as well as keys, as it actually helps turn a broken key into being a usable item for once. Overall, I have no problems with Exaltation. It's a perk not designed to be good nor bad, but instead to provide a thematic of finding an upgrade to a power you had, similar to a Metroidvania game. I like the effect, and outside of ruining toolbox players' mental states, it's overall fine. Next we have Eyes of Belmont, and I have never seen a more perfect perk in my life. This perk activates whenever a generator is completed, revealing the killer's aura for 3 seconds. This effect is rather lame sounding at first, but then you read the second part and that's what makes this perk good. Whenever a killer's aura is revealed for a certain amount of time, increase the duration by 2 seconds. This is pretty much a survivor's version of Bitter Murmur and Lethal Pursuer combined together, and it is pretty much what I would have wanted for a universal perk in the game. I have waited for the day behavior made an aura read extender for survivors, and what we got is good, not only at being a support perk, but for having a nice aura read to stand by itself too. I can't think of anything else behavior could do to make the perk better. It extends aura reading, and it is designed to prevent synergy with Blood Ember, so we don't have a second wall hack meta. It's great the way it is. Lastly, we have Moment of Glory, and I will admit, this is probably the perk I have the most mixed feelings on. The perk activates after opening or rummaging through chests 2 times, where after being injured, you are inflicted with the broken status effect for 60 seconds. After the 60-second timer ends, you will automatically heal 1 health state back. This perk effect is cancelled if you enter the dying state, and once it does finish the heal, the perk deactivates. Moment of Glory is weird. On one hand, it's a perk with a heavy cost of searching chests twice, in addition to living for 60 seconds before fully activating, but on the other hand, it's a perk that has the ability to grant you back a health state while in chase. I think behavior were very careful with designing Moment of Glory, as insta-heals in Dead by Daylight have had a notorious history, when insta-heal syringes were an actual insta-heal, and for the people Buckle Up is still very warm in many players' memories. Now the reason why I have mixed feelings about Moment of Glory is all because of the timer it has. 60 seconds is a very long time for DBD, and to live that long in a chase for many players is a challenge. However, the perk at the same time I feel was designed for that reason, to be a difficulty check for players who are attempting to show off they have the skill to survive that long. I think Moment of Glory should be placed in the same watchlist location as Hex Wretched Fate, as this is a perk we will need to see whether it is good enough or if it needs adjustments later on. Now I am going to blitz through the other adjustments, as these are not the biggest discussion points for the patch, at least compared to what I've discussed so far in part 1 and in this video. The scratch mark update pretty much looks the same. I think that they made some scratch marks a little closer and brighter, but it's a little hard to tell. The hook timer change is one I think won't cause much trouble in 90% of situations. I think it will be very annoying for comp players, as it will be harder to secure stage 2 on a player, but for the most part it's fine. If anything, it gives Insidious Basement Bubba players more time to chill with their new best friends, so not the end of the world there. Lastly, we got the Midwich update. It looks a lot more cluttered in the halls compared to before, but hey, Silent Hill does take place in America, so this may be accurate to the modern day school. There's also new tiles, there's now obstruction near the exit gates to hide players better during door standoffs, and if anything, I am just happy the breakable walls are gone from the bathroom. I said in the last video to give whoever did that a gold star, but I decided let's give them another, one for each breakable wall. Overall, the Castlevania chapter is honestly really good. The killer, although treading on paths that behavior have explored many times before, is well done. The perks for both sides are great, and the perk and killer updates are really lovely. Overall, great job behavior. You really did a good job so far with this chapter.